In the 18th and 19th centuries, whiskey was more than just a drink. It was a symbol of identity, pride, and even rebellion. For Irish immigrants arriving in America, whiskey carried with it deep cultural roots. But, the very thing that united many communities also became a source of tension, especially as laws, taxes, and cultural clashes ignited battles both literal and political. One of the earliest and most notorious whiskey-related conflicts was the Whiskey Rebellion of 1791 to 1794. Though not limited to Irish Americans, many of the rural farmers who violently opposed the new federal whiskey tax were of Irish and Scots-Irish descent. These settlers in western Pennsylvania depended on distilling surplus grain into whiskey. It was easier to transport and more profitable. The new tax, enacted by Alexander Hamilton to pay off war debt, was seen as a targeted attack on the working class, particularly immigrants. Protesters tarred and feathered tax collectors, destroyed stills, and refused to pay. President George Washington personally led troops to suppress the rebellion, the first real test of federal authority in the new republic. Later, in the 19th century, tensions between newly arrived Irish Catholics and established Protestant communities sometimes played out in saloons and taverns, places where whiskey flowed freely. Irish immigrants often faced discrimination and violence, and their communal drinking culture was misunderstood by many Americans who viewed it as immoral or unruly. In some towns, conflicts arose between so-called nativist groups like the Know-Nothings and Irishmen defending their right to congregate in public houses. Whiskey became both a scapegoat and a battlefield in this cultural war. Meanwhile, Irish-American communities took pride in preserving their distilling heritage. Many bootlegged their own whiskey during the Prohibition era, which lasted from 1920 to 1933, when the United States banned alcohol production and sales nationwide. Irish-American gangs, especially those in Boston and New York, smuggled in whiskey from Canada or secretly distilled their own in back rooms. Prohibition criminalized Irish drinking customs, turning proud cultural practices into, felonies. The backlash only strengthened the bond between Irish Americans and their whiskey tradition. Even within the Irish American community, disputes arose over whiskey quality and origin. Some Irish immigrants clung to imported Irish whiskey brands, while others embraced the bold, corn-based bourbon and rye emerging from Kentucky and Tennessee, some of which, by the way, was made by Irish descendants. The question of authenticity and loyalty to homeland products sparked some pretty heated debates, especially as Irish whiskey faced global decline during the 20th century. Today, Irish and Irish-American whiskey traditions are celebrated rather than contested, but their past tells a story of struggle, identity, and resistance. Whiskey wasn't just a drink, it was a rallying cry, a source of income, and a cultural cornerstone. Whether resisting unjust taxes, surviving Prohibition, or simply defending their place in a new world, Irish Americans fought for the right to raise a glass, and honestly, the right to be heard.